First contact in the void. The crystalline spires of Nexus Prime glowed faintly in the light of their dying sun. High Admiral Zaraval stood at the observation deck of the Last Haven station, her iridescent scales reflecting the emergency lights that had become all too common in recent months. The Void Hunters had already consumed 3 of their colony worlds, leaving only their homeworld to defend. The Nexeri civilization had achieved technological marvels over their 10,000 years of evolution. They had mastered quantum engineering, developed consciousness transfer technology, and built cities that could withstand the force of supernovas. But none of it mattered against an enemy that devoured reality itself. High Admiral, her second-in-command, Kexanar, approached with the characteristic floating motion of their species. The quantum sensors have detected another breach. The Void Hunters are coming. Zaraval's bioluminescent patterns shifted to a deep purple of concern. How many? 300 vessels, at least. They're using our own phase shift technology against us. Kexnar's tentacles curled in frustration. The adaptive shielding we developed last week is already obsolete. The Void Hunters were the ultimate predators of space-time. They didn't just destroy their prey. They absorbed their technology, their knowledge, their very essence. Each defeat made them stronger, more efficient, more unstoppable. Begin the evacuation protocol, Zaraval ordered, knowing it was probably futile. Direct all civilian ships to the emergency quantum corridors. Wheel. A new alert caught her attention. The quantum communications array was picking up an unknown signal, using primitive radio waves of all things. The message was being broadcast on all frequencies, in a language their universal translators took several seconds to decode. This is Captain Marcus Chen of the Earth exploration vessel Prometheus. We detected your quantum disturbance from 3 light-years out. Do you require assistance? Humans. Zaraval had heard of them. A young species that had barely mastered faster-than-light travel. They were considered primitive by most advanced civilizations, still using combustion weapons and chemical rockets in some cases. Their application to join the Galactic Council had been rejected 17 times. This is a restricted space, she responded automatically. Your presence here violates Council Directive 7249. A sound came through the comms that the translator identified as laughter. With all due respect, High Admiral. And yes, we can see your rank markings through our quantum imaging. Council directives won't matter much if those Void Hunter ships tear through this sector. We've been tracking them for months. Zaraval's patterns shifted to shock. Tracking them? That's impossible. Their phase shift technology works great against quantum sensors, Captain Chen interrupted. Not so great against good old-fashioned radiation detection. They still give off heat, and heat can't hide. Before she could respond, new contacts appeared on their sensors. 12 ships, tiny compared to Nexeri vessels, emerged from what appeared to be artificially generated wormholes. Their design was brutally practical, all sharp angles and exposed weapon hardpoints, with massive engines that seemed disproportionate to their size. I'm sending you our scan data on the Void Hunters, Chen continued. We've been studying them since they hit one of our mining colonies. They adapt fast, but they've got weaknesses. They're so focused on absorbing advanced technology that they don't guard against simpler threats. And we humans? We excel at simple threats. As if to demonstrate his point, the human ships launched what appeared to be solid metal projectiles at relativistic speeds. The Void Hunters' advanced shields, designed to stop energy weapons and quantum torpedoes, did nothing against chunks of tungsten moving at near-light speed. That's primitive, Kexnar observed, his patterns showing a mix of horror and fascination. Sometimes primitive works, Chen replied. Now about those evacuation corridors. We've got ships waiting in the Horsehead Nebula. Not as fancy as yours, but they'll get your people to safety. What do you say we show these Void Hunters that evolution isn't always about getting more complex? Zaraval watched as another wave of human ships emerged from wormholes, these carrying what looked like modified cargo containers. Their sensors indicated thousands of smaller objects inside, crude but effective fighters and drones, ready for deployment. For the first time in months, her pattern shifted to a color of hope. Sometimes, she realized, the path forward wasn't about advancing to the next stage of technological evolution. Sometimes it was about remembering where you came from and the simple solutions that got you there in the first place. Captain Chen, she said, her translator struggling to convey the complexity of emotion in her harmonics. I believe this is the beginning of a very interesting partnership. The battle for Nexus Prime. The command center of the last Haven station had transformed in the 12 hours since humanity's arrival. Holographic displays showing quantum probability matrices now sat beside crude tactical screens displaying simple heat signatures and radiation patterns. Captain Chen stood before the assembled Nexuri High Command, his presence drawing curious glances from the bioluminescent aliens. The Void Hunters aren't just feeding on your technology, Chen explained, pointing to a thermal image. They're feeding on your predictability. Every response you've made has been the logical next step in technological advancement. They're counting on that. High Admiral Zeraval's patterns shifted to a questioning blue. And your alternative? We do something stupid. Chen grinned. Something so fundamentally illogical that their adaptive algorithms can't process it. Humans specialize in that. The tactical displays showed the approaching Void Hunter fleet. 300 ships of living metal and stolen technology, each one a testament to countless civilizations they'd consumed. They moved in perfect formation, their quantum shields harmonizing in ways that made them nearly invincible to conventional attacks. Your quantum corridors, Chen continued, they're basically controlled wormholes, right? Stable paths through space-time. Correct, Kexnar responded. Though they're useless against the Hunters, they adapted to that technology 3 attacks ago. But what if we destabilize them? All of them. At once. The Nexuri patterns all shifted to alarm, the equivalent of a collective gasp. That would tear apart the local space-time fabric, one of the scientists protested. The gravitational shockwave would destroy everything within a light year. Not if we give it somewhere to go. Chen brought up a new display showing the human ship's positions. We've been setting up gravity wells. Crude ones, just heavy masses of tungsten and lead. We'll create a channel, funnel the energy right into the heart of their fleet. That's insane. Kexnar's patterns showed disbelief. You're talking about weaponizing space-time itself. The calculations alone would take years to. Already done, Chen interrupted, holding up a tablet with handwritten equations. Sometimes a pencil is faster than a quantum computer. We don't need it to be perfect. We just need it to work once. Zeraval studied the human's plan. It violated at least 15 fundamental laws of physics as the Nexuri understood them. It had a significant chance of destroying both fleets and possibly the planet itself. It was, by any rational standard, suicide. It was also the first plan she'd seen that the Void Hunters couldn't possibly anticipate. How long do you need? She asked. 2 hours to position the gravity wells. Then we'll need your people to initiate a synchronized collapse of every quantum corridor in the system. Chen's expression turned serious. I won't lie. This is going to hurt. Your city's quantum infrastructure will probably be fried. But it's better than the alternative. The next 2 hours were a blur of activity. Human ships moved with practiced precision, positioning their crude gravity wells in a complex geometric pattern. Nexuri engineers worked to modify their quantum corridors, preparing them for an unprecedented synchronized collapse. The Void Hunters, perhaps sensing something was wrong, accelerated their approach. Their forward scouts began probing the defensive lines, testing for weaknesses with stolen weapons technology. They're adapting faster than expected, Kexnar reported, his patterns showing concern. They've already developed countermeasures to our kinetic weapons. Good, Chen smiled. Let them focus on the obvious threats. 30 seconds to corridor collapse. Admiral. Zeraval looked out at her city. the crystalline spires that had stood for millennia, the quantum networks that had connected their civilization. What they were about to do would destroy generations of progress. And yet, she realized, sometimes survival meant being willing to step backward in order to move forward. "Initiate collapse," she ordered. The universe seemed to hold its breath. Then, in a cascading wave of light and energy, every quantum corridor in the Nexus system collapsed simultaneously. Space itself buckled and twisted, the gravitational shockwave catching the Void Hunter fleet in its grip. The human gravity wells did their work, channeling the destructive energy into a focused beam that cut through the enemy formation like a sword through flesh. Void Hunter ships, for all their stolen technology, had no defense against the fabric of reality itself being turned into a weapon. As the energy wave dissipated, the survivors looked out upon a changed battlefield. Half the Void Hunter fleet had been reduced to scattered atoms. The remainder, their perfect formation shattered, began to retreat in disarray. "They're running," Kexnar announced, his patterns bright with disbelief and joy. "For the first time since they appeared, they're actually running." Chen was already moving to the next tactical display. "They'll be back," he warned, "with counters to this strategy. But that's okay. We've got plenty more bad ideas where that came from." Zaravel watched as her city's quantum networks flickered and died, centuries of technological progress temporarily wiped away. But as she looked at the retreating enemy fleet, she realized something profound. Sometimes the most advanced civilization wasn't the one with the most sophisticated technology, but the one willing to think beyond it. "Captain Chen," she said, her patterns showing a complex mixture of emotions, "I believe it's time we discussed Phase 2 of your bad ideas. Innovation under fire." The research facility beneath Nexus Prime hummed with an odd mixture of quantum harmonics and mechanical noise. 3 weeks had passed since the battle that forced the Void Hunters to retreat, and the unlikely alliance between humans and Nexari had produced something unprecedented. A hybrid laboratory where advanced quantum technology shared space with hydraulic systems and chemical engines. Dr. Sarah Martinez wiped grease from her hands as she studied the device before her. It looked like something from a steampunk fantasy, brass and copper mechanisms intertwined with crystalline quantum processors. Next to her, lead researcher Texelar's patterns swirled with excitement as his tentacles made minute adjustments to the quantum matrices. "It's elegant," Texelar said, his translator struggling to convey his enthusiasm. "Primitive, yet brilliant. Using mechanical systems to trigger quantum effects. No wonder the Void Hunters never saw it coming." "That's because they're looking for patterns," Sarah explained, tightening a bolt with an old-fashioned wrench. "They expect civilizations to follow predictable paths of technological evolution. But humans, we're masters of technological regression when we need to be." The device they were working on was just one of many hybrid weapons being developed in the facility. They called it the quantum slingshot, a deceptively simple mechanism that used basic mechanical force to compress quantum particles into unstable projectiles. No advanced targeting systems, no complex computations. Just point, pull, and watch physics break down at the quantum level. "Incoming transmission from the outer defense line," the facility's AI announced. "Captain Chen and High Admiral Zaravel request your presence in the tactical room." The tactical room had become a symbol of their cooperation. Ancient Nexari star charts projected alongside hand-drawn human battle plans. Chen and Zaravel stood before a holographic display showing the movements of Void Hunter scout ships. "They're probing our defenses again," Chen reported as Sarah and Texelar entered. "But something's different. They're being cautious, almost hesitant." Zaravel's patterns shifted to a thoughtful green. They've never shown such behavior before. Typically, they analyze, adapt, and attack with absolute confidence. "Because we've done something they can't quantify." Sarah stepped forward, pulling up the schematics for their hybrid weapons. "Look at their scan patterns. They're trying to understand our technology, but they can't because it doesn't follow any logical progression. We're mixing quantum mechanics with rubber bands and springs, and it's driving their adaptation algorithms crazy," Texlar added, his patterns brightening. "They can't predict what we'll do next because we're not following any recognizable pattern of advancement." Chen smiled. "Then let's give them something else to worry about. Dr. Martinez, how's the quantum slingshot coming along?" "We've got 5 prototypes ready," Sarah replied. "They're not pretty, but they work. One shot can collapse a quantum field into a localized singularity. No complex targeting required, just basic geometry and good aim." "And the delivery system?" Texlar's patterns shifted to what the humans had learned to recognize as pride. "We've modified some ancient Nexari mining vessels. Their primitive electromagnetic shields won't register on Void Hunter sensors. They'll never see us coming." The meeting was interrupted by a facility-wide alert. Long-range sensors had detected a massive energy surge from the direction of the Horsehead Nebula. The Void Hunters were gathering their forces for another attack. "How many?" Zaraval demanded. "Over 1,000 ships," the AI reported. "They've combined their technology into some kind of collective consciousness. Our quantum sensors can barely process the readings." Chen studied the tactical display, his expression hardening. "They're adapting faster than we anticipated, but that's okay. So are we." He turned to Sarah and Texlar. "How quickly can you replicate those hybrid weapons? With both human and Nexari manufacturing techniques?" Sarah exchanged glances with Texlar. "We can have 100 ready in 48 hours. They won't be elegant. Elegant is the last thing we want." Chen interrupted. "The messier, the better. In fact," he paused, a familiar glint in his eye that Sarah had learned to both love and fear. "What if we made them even more unpredictable?" Texlar's pattern swirled with curiosity. "What do you have in mind?" "The Void Hunters adapt by analyzing patterns and predicting outcomes. So let's give each weapon slightly different components. No two exactly alike. Make them as random and chaotic as possible." Zaraval's patterns showed concern. "That goes against every principle of Nexari engineering. Our strength has always been in precision and uniformity." "Exactly," Chen smiled. "And that's why it'll work. The Void Hunters have never encountered a species that deliberately introduces chaos into their own weapons. They won't know what to adapt to because there won't be any pattern to analyze." Sarah felt a surge of excitement. It was crazy, brilliant, and exactly the kind of thinking that had kept humanity surviving against all odds throughout their history. "We'll need to completely redesign our production process," she said. "Mix quantum engineering with good old-fashioned human improvisation." "Can it be done?" Zaraval asked. Texlar's patterns shifted through a rainbow of colors before settling on a determined blue. "It violates every manufacturing principle we've developed over 10,000 years. His tentacles curled in what Sarah now recognized as a smile. "When do we start?" As they rushed back to the laboratory, Sarah couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd come. The Nexari were learning to embrace chaos, while humans were learning to harness quantum mechanics with Stone Age tools. Together, they were writing a new chapter in the evolution of warfare, one that the Void Hunters couldn't possibly predict. And in the end, she realized that unpredictability might be their greatest weapon of all. The turning point. The battle began at dawn, if such a term held meaning in the depths of space. The Void Hunter Armada emerged from quantum space like a tide of living metal, their ships now merged into vast geometric patterns that defied conventional physics. But the defenders of Nexus Prime were ready. "All ships, execute randomization protocols." Captain Chen's voice crackled through the comm systems. The defensive fleet, a bizarre collection of modified Nexari vessels and retrofitted human ships, began to move in seemingly chaotic patterns, their formations constantly shifting without any discernible logic. High Admiral Zaraval watched from the command center, her patterns rippling with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. "The Void Hunters are attempting to analyze our fleet movements," she reported, studying the quantum readouts. Their prediction algorithms are showing signs of strain. Good, Chen replied. Dr. Martinez, status of the quantum slingshots. Sarah's voice came through, accompanied by the sound of mechanical clanking. All weapons primed and individually randomized. No two will produce the same quantum signature. Texelar's modifications are holding steady. The Void Hunters struck first, launching a barrage of energy weapons that could have stripped a planet's atmosphere. But the Defenders' erratic movements, guided by human instinct rather than computational logic, made them nearly impossible to target effectively. Now, Chen ordered, launch the first wave. From the belly of the defensive fleet, hundreds of crude-looking projectiles burst forth. Each one was a unique combination of mechanical springs, quantum particles, and what appeared to be rubber bands. The Void Hunters' advanced shields, designed to stop coherent energy attacks, couldn't process the sheer randomness of the assault. The first hits were devastating. Quantum singularities blossomed across the enemy fleet, each one behaving slightly differently due to the randomized nature of the weapons. Some collapsed entire sections of ships into microscopic points of infinite density. Others created temporary rifts in spacetime, shearing vessels apart at the quantum level. Their adaptation algorithms are breaking down, Texelar reported excitedly from his station. They can't formulate a unified defense because there's no pattern to adapt to. But the Void Hunters were far from defeated. Their collective consciousness shifted, and suddenly their ships began to split apart, becoming smaller, faster units that could dodge the quantum attacks more easily. They're learning. Zoraval's patterns darkened with concern. Already developing countermeasures. Exactly as we planned, Chen smiled. Execute Phase 2. The human ships suddenly broke formation, their engines firing in ways that seemed to defy basic physics. They were using the gravitational distortions from the quantum weapons to slingshot themselves through space, achieving impossible angles of attack. Remember, Sarah's voice came through the comms. The quantum slingshots aren't just weapons. They're creating localized distortions in spacetime itself. Use them. The battle devolved into what could only be described as controlled chaos. Human pilots, guided by intuition and split-second decisions, rode the waves of quantum distortion like surfers on a cosmic ocean. The Void Hunters, for all their computational power, couldn't predict the essentially random nature of human choice combined with quantum uncertainty. Their collective consciousness is fragmenting, Texelar announced, his patterns bright with excitement. The randomness, it's forcing them to think as individuals. This was the key insight they had been waiting for. The Void Hunters' greatest strength, their ability to act as a unified consciousness, was also their greatest weakness. They couldn't process true randomness because it required individual, instantaneous decisions that couldn't be computed across a collective mind. All ships, Chen commanded, activate your whiskers. The whiskers were perhaps the strangest weapons ever conceived. Quantum filaments attached to simple mechanical oscillators, vibrating at random frequencies. As they activated, they created a web of unpredictable quantum interference patterns throughout the battlefield. The effect on the Void Hunters was immediate and dramatic. Their collective consciousness, unable to maintain coherence across the quantum chaos, began to break apart. Ships started moving independently, their actions becoming erratic and uncoordinated. They're not just retreating, Zoraval observed, her patterns showing astonishment. They're actually fighting each other. Their individual units can't agree on how to adapt. The battle turned into a rout. Without their unified consciousness, the Void Hunters lost the ability to adapt and evolve as a single entity. Individual ships, suddenly forced to think for themselves, fell easy prey to the Defenders' unconventional tactics. As the last enemy ships fled or were destroyed, a strange silence fell over the battlefield. The Defenders had achieved what countless advanced civilizations had thought impossible. They had found a way to defeat an enemy that had seemed unbeatable. Status report, Chen called out, his voice showing the strain of battle. 60% of our weapons expended, Sarah reported. But since they're all different, we can make more without worrying about the void hunters adapting to them. Quantum interference patterns are stabilizing, Texlar added. But the data we've gathered, it's revolutionary. We've proven that controlled chaos can be more powerful than perfect order. Zaravol's patterns shifted to a color that the human sensors couldn't even detect, a shade reserved for moments of profound revelation. All this time, she said softly, we thought advancement meant moving forward in a straight line. But you humans showed us that sometimes the path forward means embracing uncertainty itself. Chen looked out at the battlefield, where fragments of void hunter ships drifted alongside spent human projectiles and dormant quantum filaments. That's the thing about evolution, he said with a smile. Sometimes the best way to advance is to be unpredictable. Legacy of two species. 1 year after the Battle of Nexus Prime, the crystalline spires of the city gleamed under a new sun. The quantum corridors had been rebuilt, but not as they were before. Now they incorporated elements of both human and Nexari design. Precise quantum gates controlled by simple mechanical switches, a marriage of complexity and simplicity that had become the hallmark of their combined civilization. High Admiral Zaraval stood in the newly constructed convergence chamber, her patterns shifting through colors of pride and contemplation as she watched the ceremony below. Captain Chen, now Admiral Chen, stood beside her, both of them observing as the first class of joint human Nexari engineers graduated from the Academy of Hybrid Sciences. Did you ever think we'd end up here? Chen asked, watching as Dr. Martinez and Texlar presented the graduates with their credentials, quantum tablets housed in old-fashioned leather cases, leading a revolution in technological philosophy. Zaravel's patterns rippled with amusement. Even our most advanced probability computers couldn't have predicted this outcome. The Void Hunters hadn't been seen in any known galaxy for months. Their last encounter had revealed the truth. Their collective consciousness had completely fractured, unable to reconcile the chaos introduced into their perfect system. Individual ships had scattered across the universe, some seeking to evolve independently, others attempting to rebuild their hive mind in ways that could handle unpredictability. The Galactic Council is meeting next week, Chen mentioned casually. I hear they're reconsidering Earth's application for membership. They don't have much choice, Zaraval replied. The success of our hybrid technology has forced them to reconsider their definition of advancement. Many younger species are already adopting our methods. Around them, the city buzzed with activity. Human construction crews worked alongside Nexari quantum engineers, building structures that combined ancient stone architecture with advanced force fields. In the streets, children of both species played games that merged quantum probability with simple physical skills. The latest survey teams found 3 more civilizations under attack by Void Hunter remnants, Chen reported. They've requested our assistance, and we'll help them. Zaraval's patterns showed determination, but not by giving them our technology. We'll teach them what we learned, that true resilience comes from embracing both chaos and order. In the research labs beneath the city, Sarah and Texlar had continued their work, but with a different focus. Instead of weapons, they now developed hybrid technologies for peaceful purposes. Their latest project was a revolutionary form of space travel that used quantum tunneling triggered by simple mechanical actions, faster-than-light travel achieved through the most basic principles of physics. The universe is changing, Chen observed, watching a group of human children trying to mimic the color patterns of their Nexari friends using handheld lights. And for once, it's not changing in a predictable direction. Perhaps that's what the Void Hunters truly feared, Zaraval suggested. Not any specific technology, but the idea that evolution doesn't have to follow a single path. That strength can come from combining different approaches, even ones that seem primitive or chaotic. The ceremony below concluded with a tradition that had emerged spontaneously in the past year. The graduates created a deliberate quantum uncertainty field, then threw their caps into it, letting random chance determine where they would land. Some phased through solid matter. Others appeared in unexpected places throughout the chamber. It was a perfect symbol of their new philosophy: controlled chaos, predictable unpredictability. "We're receiving more requests from other species," Chen said, "not just for help against the Void Hunters, but for guidance in combining technologies. They want to learn our methods, and we'll teach them." Zaraval's patterns shifted to a deep, resonant blue of commitment. "But first, we'll make sure they understand that it's not just about the technology. It's about learning to think differently, to embrace uncertainty as a strength." As they watched the celebration below, a quantum alert chimed softly. Another Void Hunter remnant had been detected, this one attempting to rebuild its collective consciousness. But neither leader showed concern. They had learned that the best defense against an enemy that evolved through patterns was to have no pattern at all. "You know," Chen smiled, "when we first arrived here, I never imagined we'd end up rewriting the rules of technological advancement." "And I never imagined," Zaraval replied, her patterns showing warmth, "that going backward would be the key to moving forward." Together, they looked out over their changed world. The crystalline spires still reached for the stars, but now they were supported by simple steel beams. Quantum computers ran calculations that would boggle the mind, controlled by mechanical switches that any child could understand. It wasn't the future either species had envisioned, but it was stronger for being unexpected. And somewhere out in the vast darkness between the stars, the scattered remnants of the Void Hunters continued to evolve, but differently now. They were learning, slowly, painfully, that true adaptation meant more than simply becoming more advanced.